Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho was first released to the masses on June 16th of 1960, and now, on its 60th anniversary, I'm going to dive back into it and discover if it has either aged like a fine wine, or if it has been crushed under the weight of time. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome to another Let's Discuss video. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video, we are going to be taking a retrospective look at Psycho on its 60th anniversary. Way back in 1960, Alfred Hitchcock changed the suspenseful mystery thriller genre forever. And despite it receiving critical acclaim way back then, I really don't think that anyone thought we'd still be talking about it now. So that begs the question though, are people still talking about it for the right reasons? To answer that question, I've decided to take a deep dive back into this film, explore every aspect of it, as to if it aged well and still deserves all the critical acclaim it gets. So without further ado, let's get into some wig wearing, knife slashing, and hop right into things. For this video in particular, it seemed best to dice it up into multiple sections. Those sections being what has aged well, what hasn't aged well, and my overall thoughts on the film after 60 years. So, what has aged well? Firstly is the suspense. As soon as Marion makes off with the money, the suspense kicks in right away. She's seen by her boss and the man she is stealing from as she's leaving town. She is then caught by a police officer sleeping in her car on the side of the road, and afterwards that police officer continues to follow her into the next town. And although Norman seems friendly enough at first, you can certainly tell something is off. The suspense continues throughout the rest of the film as you try to figure out the central mystery, and you are well aware of the danger at Bates Motel. So whenever our heroes arrive to investigate, you genuinely fear for their lives, wondering if peril is waiting just around the corner. Next is the mystery, or I guess I could say the storytelling, but then again the mystery is really the main thing. People have to remember that this isn't a traditional slasher flick like Halloween or Friday the 13th. In fact, it's not really a horror film at all, and is indeed a mystery suspense. Or you could even classify it as a thriller. Now, although the big twist at the end of the film is fairly well known, especially after multiple sequels, a successful prequel TV series, and just the sheer fact that the film has been forever cemented into pop culture and movie history, it surprisingly doesn't take away from the overall impact of the twist and the mystery present throughout the film itself. Not to mention, the movie completely subverted expectations halfway through and shocked audiences everywhere by killing off Marion, who everyone was led to believe was the main character, and the central plot was to follow her on the run. If you had no idea what this movie was and just watched it for the first time, you'd likely be shocked by the ending. They hide it so well, it's practically flawless. It's subtly hinted at as well throughout the movie, with how you never see Norma in person, and you never see Norma and Norman in a scene together interacting with one another. And anytime you hear her voice, it's off-screen when Norman is off-screen as well. Aside from that one scene, of course, where you see him carrying her corpse down to the cellar. Plus, Norman often shifts the story of her illness around ever so slightly with each retelling. And lastly is the acting. Despite most general audiences believing that many old films don't age well in the performances with it, Psycho is filmed proof that this is far from the truth. Each and every performance in this 1960 classic holds up extremely well. Each character has great depth, and there's far more to them than meets the eye. The actors and actresses all give superb and unforgettable performances, and their on-screen chemistry is really quite remarkable. Each conversation has a beautiful natural flow to it, and the varying personalities clash oh so well. But of course, I have to give a little extra attention to the supremely talented and obvious scene stealer Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates. Although it was sad to see his and the characters fall from grace with each subsequent sequel, there is no amount of failures that could take away from this initial performance. Norman is a very loaded character, and Perkins portrays that with grace, switching back and forth between the shy, introverted, and slightly awkward side, and the more dark and mysterious side, which has something to hide. That sudden switch you see through the movie, from calm and mannerly to abrupt and aggressive, is seamless. And when you see him cleaning up his mother's mess time and time again, all you see is a cold-hearted and stony-eyed, merciless monster. Truly a performance that will never lose its impact. And now for the things that didn't age quite so well. What hasn't aged well is all the things you would commonly expect. The film is in black and white, and I know for a fact that most people categorized under the general audience label won't really like that, and that's perfectly fine, I'm just saying. So it takes away the color that can sometimes really bring a film to life. Although I must add that I personally think it works perfectly here. Aside from that, a lot of the visuals haven't aged all that well, and don't go into this flick expecting your typical gore-filled and topless women-loaded slasher, because that it is not. The couple of deaths that there are in this film are extremely rough around the edges, even if one of them is one of the most iconic death scenes in film history. And really, any physical encounter feels extremely awkward. And like I said, the other obvious ones being the fact that the film was released in 1960, so you know, it's not in HD or 4K or anything, and the sound isn't perfect. Plus, of course, they use old school techniques, it's an old movie, and it can, at times, show its age. Hold on just 1 second. If you're enjoying the video, don't get caught in that 90.1% who are currently watching and not subscribed to my channel. Because if you are in that 90.1%, well, be sure to hit that subscribe button right now to get more content just like this. And while you're at it, don't forget to click that little bell icon, that way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And now, back to the video. So now my closing thoughts on this 60th anniversary. In the end, Psycho, for the most part, holds up incredibly well. A lot more than most movies from its time do, and more than I ever thought it would've. Many of the old school techniques are considered archaic by today's standards, and some of the film's bigger moments are a little unpolished, like the big deaths that occur for instance. But the suspense, storytelling, central mystery, and performances have more than stood the test of time. This movie is a classic and considered one of the best films of all time for a reason. It will still to this day keep you engaged and locked in until the very last frame. And the final close-up shot of Norman's face with his mother's off-screen voice will stick with you until the end of your days as one of the most eerie endings to a film ever. Hitchcock was known as the master of suspense for a reason, and he undoubtedly deserves his title as one of the greatest and most influential filmmakers to have ever lived. So that was all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agreed or disagreed with my opinion. And let me know your own personal thoughts of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho on its 60th anniversary. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon, that way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. As always, stay safe, thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you, and while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.